Greetings. I'd like to welcome you to the fourth episode of Masculine Militia. My name is Antonio Alacina, a.k.a. the Daywalker. And in this episode, I'm actually going to go back to something that is still happening as it concerns the Dave Chappelle situation with the LGBT community. I mean, I went over it in my first episode. I recapped it in the second. And I also kind of touched on it on the third. And I didn't mean to just continue to, with this particular thing, but what I'm seeing is a continuation, is a push by this community to not want its power to be weakened in any way. They actually want to give the perception that there's an all-out assault by people like Dave Chappelle on the LGBT community. So it was yesterday, or maybe it was today, I think it was yesterday, that members of the LGBT community organized a walkout at Netflix in protest of the Dave Chappelle special. They're saying that they are dissatisfied with Netflix's response, or even just the fact that they put out his last stand-up special, The Closer, because they think or feel that he was being, I guess, transphobic. I mean, because it's not really clear, at least I'm not clear, on what was transphobic about what Dave Chappelle said. In fact, I went over what this definition of transphobic and it's basically a misnomer to me, because phobic is to say the fear of. It would say the fear of trans people. And as I was saying before, the definition doesn't quite capture what people in these communities would like for people to believe. Like, nobody's afraid of trans people. Well, not according to in terms of the definition and what they want to say. What they're really saying is that you hate trans people, but the word is phobic, having a phobia of. And so I went into talking about how at the root of this thing that is supposed to be fear of, at the root of it is supposed to be the hate of. You hate them because you fear them, or something along those lines. So I'm not really clear on what it was that Dave Chappelle said that caused the trans community and the LGBT community as a whole to come out against him. Was it because he made jokes about trans people, about lesbians? So there's nothing funny that a person can say. There's no joke that a person can tell about them. And the thing is that when I say that they're like, you can joke about trans people. You can joke about, there can be jokes about it. The thing is that because LGBTQ community, that community has been placed, or they have placed themselves in the classification of an oppressed and maligned group, then the jokes or anything that is in disagreement with their behavior becomes void. You can't do that. You can't make jokes. It's like saying, a white person making a joke about black people's lips, as in the case of John Gruden, who was being serious. But you're saying I can't make jokes, or white people can't make jokes about the size of black people's lips, because what has happened is black people have a history of being oppressed, and in that oppression has been the legitimization of the oppression through tropes, through things that weren't really true, but were made to seem that way in order to legitimize the oppression and destruction of these people, of black people. So there are things that white people don't get to say as it concerns black people, not without it being looked at as racist or bigoted. So what has happened is the LGBT community has placed themselves, or they have been placed by who, I don't know, or I won't say I don't know, but we'll get into that. They have been placed or placed themselves in the category or the classification of oppressed and maligned people. So that means that there are things you can't say about them. There are things you can't say about gay people, homosexuals, as it concerns their behavior and lifestyle. It's off limits. You can't do that. Because when you do, it is supposed to be, the motive is supposed to be, the central motive is supposed to be that when you tell jokes about them or you say things that are not attractive about that community, your central motive is supposed to be hate. It's just like with black people, your central motive for calling black people names associated with our physical characteristics, you know, broad nose and lips, big lips, and even dark skin, or stereotypical things like, you know, we're lazy. That black people are lazy. And black people don't like to work, don't want to get a job. Black men in particularly. To say those things, and for a white man to say those things would be looked at as being stereotypical and racist or bigoted. If a white man were to say them, if he were to make jokes about them, it will be looked at for the most part by many as a racist joke. Because it's taking a stereotype and giving it a kind of life that makes it seem as if that stereotype can be true, and placing it in humor. So that would mean that as a black person, when that is being done, it would continue to promote a stereotype of negativity as it's concerning black people, black men in this case. And if that is done, then that would become a part of social acceptance in some way. It can be socially accepted to see black people or black men in this particular case as it has been joked about, as the stereotype has been joked about. So the LGBT community is taking that same stance to say, if you joke about our behavior or who we are, then that joke has the possibility of promoting it in a culture, to a culture, to become a part of a culture, and in it, the acceptance of the beliefs of the stereotypes. Some of which may be stereotypes, some may not be. But this is what it seems the LGBT community is saying. Like, don't joke about that. Joking about that says that, look, people are going to take these jokes, not just the simple fact of making fun of LGBT community people, but the jokes become a part of a cultural acceptance. And if it's accepted by people in our culture, then people begin to treat you according to what they have accepted about you. The perception or the view that they have of you that has been accepted, they begin to treat you accordingly. This is what it seems like the LGBT community is saying. And the thing is, it's like, if I disagree with them in that particular thing right there that I just explained, hopefully clear enough. If I explain it to them, or I've explained it to you, but yet I disagree with it, and I'm going to tell you why I disagree with it. But I disagree that they are equal in the same way as black people, that the class of oppression that LGBT people in that community experiences or has experienced is not equal, not even close, not even in the same universe as black people. But this is what they seem to be attempting to make an equivalence with. There's an equivalence that they want to make with black people, that community. Black people in particular. Because black people are the poster children, if we would say it like that, for the oppressed. Black people in America and around the world are the prototype of the oppressed. If you want to compare oppression, you have to look at black people in America and around the world. And then everything else is after that. And of course, there are arguments to be like, you know what, there's some white people that oppress, not like black people. Because while some people like to say falsely in most cases, but in some other cases true, that black people had slaves. Okay. Some white people enslaved other white people. Okay. The difference is, without going through all of the detail, but the main difference is black people, particularly in America, have been destroyed. Because even the white people that enslaved white people, those white people that they enslaved, they still knew their own language. They still knew their own history. They still knew who they were. And they didn't have a consistent bombardment of the destruction of their culture, their cultural centers in terms of geography, their history and knowledge that they had amassed over centuries, over millennium, they didn't have theirs destroyed. They still knew who they were. They still knew what language they spoke. They still knew what land they came from. They still had a lineage that they could trace with ease, because none of that was destroyed. When they enslaved them, the destruction that black people went through, they didn't go through. There's some places in history books where they say the slave walked beside his master. The slave walked beside his master. Because slavery is not simply about chattel or being chattel, being in chains, being forced to do as another commands you. It's not just that. Before black people in America were enslaved, brought here, some of us were already here. There's an argument by some people saying, well, there were no slave ships, where they are, blah, 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 blah. Like, come on now. I agree. Many of the people that were black were already on this land, and some called them Native Americans or natives or Indians. A lot of black people that were enslaved were already here. Facts. Facts. They were already here. True. But guess what? Some were brought here too from Africa. There are Africans who have records of these things. Yes. There was a transatlantic slave trade. But we were all over the Western Hemisphere because we had already traveled. We understood the currents that went to what is now called America and back to what is now called Africa. We knew how to travel those currents. So we were here, a lot of us, yes, but some of us were brought here too. It can be both. It can be both. So, as I was saying, black people have been destroyed. Our language, our culture, our way of worship, how we worship, even who. Our life, we lived according to a whole other way where everything, every life mattered. In what people call Africa, and even here in what is now called the Americas, when we had fights with one another. In some history, you can read it and it'll be like this nation or this tribe fought and it was a bloody war. It was a bloody war. When we think of bloody, we think of it in the contemporary way we think of bloody. Because to us, bloody is a lot of blood. But what is a lot of blood contextually? When we fought one another and we had a bloody war. That had to do with one person. One death was a bloody war. In the movies, they've depicted David and Goliath. And they would have the Judeans, I think, the house of Judah or the Israelites on one side, and then they had the Philistines on the other. And the Israelites were afraid of the Philistines because they had this champion. His name is Goliath. And they were afraid of him because every time he came about, he was slaying whomever came out. But what would happen is there wasn't a fight where everybody was going to fight each other and kill each other. And all. That wasn't happening. It was one person that they were sending out to represent everybody else. That was Goliath. And in this case, David. And when David slew Goliath, that was a win for the Israelites. That was a win. That wasn't really their history. That was ours. That's how we fought. So when this enemy was coming through Africa, particularly West Africa, and they were slaughtering whole villages and eating people and all this kind of stuff, when we didn't know how to fight like that. We did ceremonial stuff for days on the side, all our people on this side, all their people on this side, doing all this singing and dancing, and then we sent a champion out, and they sent a champion out, and they got to it, and if they subdued that champion, then whoever was subdued lost. And sometimes in that battle, someone would get killed. And if someone got killed, that was a bloody war. That's how we lived. That we weren't killing everybody because we weren't trying to destroy people and take their land and resources and all this kind of stuff. We went to war over disputes relative to the adherence to our ways of life. The point is, we lived a different way. And most of us can't fathom that way because we're so used to seeing this way. So we base even how we perceive and how we view history based on our contemporary understanding. So black people, some came from Africa, yes. Many were here in what is called the Americas, yes. True. Both can be true. So, but we got conquered because we didn't fight the way that they fought. We had a different way of life, had a different thinking. We had to come to learn that we had to fight back a certain way. But by that time, it had been almost 300 years. Then the transatlantic slave trade began. A lot of other history there. But my point is that to be a slave is not simply about being forced to follow the commands of another. To be a slave at one time, it was. But when it came to black people, the transatlantic slave trade, the destruction of black civilization, slavery took on a whole other meaning. It meant not just taking the land of another, forcing forcing black people to be or follow the commands of another. It meant total mental, intellectual, spiritual, social, economic destruction. Total destruction. Total annihilation. It is the destruction of black civilization. I mean, it was destroyed. So this is the class of oppression that black people are in. LGBTQ community ain't in that class. LGBT community is not even close to that. Not at all. If you want to see or have a standard of oppression, who are you going to look at in this world? Who are you looking at? You looking at white people? No, they've been the oppressors. Have they oppressed each other? Yeah. But collectively, they have been the beneficiaries. They call it white privilege today. I don't care how poor of a white person you are, all you have to do is stand up and be a white person. And you getting the benefit of the doubt. Clean yourself up if you're not clean. You're going to have more of a chance than anybody else in the white man's world. So, it ain't them. Were the natives in America oppressed? No, not really. But they were. They weren't annihilated because a lot of those that were looked at as Native Americans were actually black people. So they want us to believe that they've killed off all of the natives. No, they didn't. Did they kill a lot of them? Yes. Most of it was done with trickery. But they still know the traditions. Even the ones that are surviving, even the ones that are claiming to be natives today, that are not natives. But they're claiming to be natives, some of them. They are on reservations, or they've been relegated to reservations, and they have casinos, these type of things they have all. But guess what? Those are certain ones. Not us, many of us who are actually natives. They want to make sure that they don't say that you're a native, because then that will make you be eligible to get some of the things that they've offered the natives for taking their land or taking our land. Yeah. So were they the ones that we see who call themselves natives today? Were they the no. Are they the standard by which you measure oppression? No. Is it the Asians? Any of them? Because I look at all of them as, well, I won't say I look at them all the same, but we all, just like Asia and many places around the world, they're all divided by culture and language. Same people, though. You're going to tell me the Japanese and the Chinese are separate. They're not the same. Or the Koreans. They're not the same. The Vietnamese, the Cambodians, the Thai. the thing that separates them is culture and language. Same people. Same people. Are they the standard by which oppression is measured? Because there is a standard by which oppression is measured. Whether you enact the standard consciously or unconsciously, there is a standard. Is it the Asians? So it's not the Native Americans, the Asians. Is it the Hispanics? Now, we call these people Hispanic. His Spaniards. Because most people that call themselves Hispanic or Latina or Latino, that means that they were conquered by the Spaniards, who were white, Europeans. They came to the West, conquered those that were here, put their blood in them, found some already here and put their blood in them as they conquered them and gave them a language and a culture. And then they called themselves Hispanics or Latinos or Latinas or Boricua and so forth and so on. Separated by language and culture. Are they the standard? Or were a lot of them us too? Black people. Because we were all over the West. We had been all over the globe. We decided to leave Europe for Europeans. We didn't want to be there, even though there were some of us that were there. But we were heavily populated in the West. We want to be separate from them. We did it on purpose. It wasn't like somehow, God said, well, I'm going to make some of y'all over here and make some of y'all over there. There's a process by which this happened. So, are the Latinos, the Hispanics, are they the standard by which oppression is measured? Well, I submit to you that none of them are. That it is black people. There's this campaign that has been in existence for many decades to make it seem as if black people, it wasn't so bad to be enslaved. It wasn't so bad. Some Negroes even will say that. It wasn't so bad. Thank God that, that he allowed us to come to America. Because as far as they're concerned, we were in Africa with bones in our noses and whatever. Making sounds and not having a language. Just making a sound, some grunting or something. Got the history all backwards. They want to make it seem as if we were blessed to come to America. What ended up being America. Come here to build it. To build America. This is what many of them, even Negroes, like to think. As if coming here was, like the white man was just, trying to save us or something. Or saving us was an unintended consequence of bringing us here. Nah. So who is the standard by which we measure oppression in terms of people? Is it the people that call themselves Jews? Listen, since the Jews have been here the last 4,000 years, they fought with each other. They were called God's chosen people. See, when you get chosen to do something. God, if he's choosing you to do something. What did he choose these people to do? Do you know? Say, God's chosen people, what did he choose you for? Just because you was just great? God chose us. Okay, he chose you just because you? I mean, what made him choose you? Who are you? What was your job? Did you do your job? What did you do with what God gave you? Because Jewish people, hey, if you look at the top of any industry today, any industry, science, politics, finance, sports, medicine, any of it, it's a Jew. I'm not knocking them. I'm not knocking them. Industrious. Smart. But you know what? These things are cultural. I had a friend growing up named Benito Musco. He was an Italian Jew. I used to go over to his house, and I used to be over there a lot. And his parents, with him and his little sister and little brother, the way that culture was put down in that house, excellence was not only an expectation, there was no opposite for them. I didn't understand that when I was growing up. I just remember they did things a certain way. They spoke a certain way. They had, like I said, it was greater than an expectation of what they were going to do, their children. The children were looked at, this is just a lifestyle. Excellence is a lifestyle. Wasn't even an expectation, it was more than that. It was a lifestyle. And they carried that with each other because they have a culture that they have kept going for the last 4,000 years. I don't knock them. I try to learn from them. Learn that aspect anyway. That excellence aspect. Were they oppressed? I don't think so. Have they been persecuted? Yes. Some people have been persecuted. Some groups have been persecuted, but not oppressed. You can be persecuted and not oppressed because you got to understand, if I'm saying something on the microphone today, pardon me, that if a Jewish person feels as if what I'm saying is anti-Semitic, not that I'm even being anti-Semitic from my point of view, but if they think that I am, they have power to make sure I don't get to say it no more, not over no airwaves, or to oppress me, or to bring down some type of retribution, reprisal. When you have power to do this to people, you are not oppressed. You are not oppressed. If you can say somebody's being anti-Semitic and you can bring them down, if you got that power, you're not being oppressed. You're powerful. If you can lobby Congress and the halls of government to do as you want them to do, and they do it, you are not oppressed. You're not oppressed. I'm not mad that you got power. But I can be a little upset at you by how you use it. Because if you're using it and it's to my detriment or the detriment of my people, yeah, I'm gonna be a little upset. Just like you would be if you were in that position. You claim that position, but you're not in it. So Jews are not the measure for oppression. They're not the standard to measure oppression. Did Hitler kill and murder? I think the calculation is 6 million or more Jews. That was horrible. That you're going to kill someone, that you want to murder someone because of who they are. If you don't want to be around them, go do your own thing. Let them do their own thing. But you're going to kill them? Man, come on. But they, and that was horrible. But they got a guy named Leopold that was in Africa that damn near did exterminate a tribe. I forgot the guy's name his last name is Rhodes. The scholarship, Rhodes Scholarship, is named after him. These guys killed upwards of 60 million. Cutting off hands, putting in slave work, and murdering and killing and raping upwards of 60 million Africans. So an African life at 60 million is less than a Jewish life at 6 million? Murder, killing people because of who they are, his color, their skin, and all that's bad. Their culture, all that's bad. All that's negative. All that's crazy. But the measure, the standard by which we measure oppression really is black people. So every time there is a measure being measured, black people are used and sometimes Jews are used. But I don't think Jews should be used as that measure because they don't have that. I can get into it much deeper. So if you want to make comments and send me emails, all that kind of stuff, that's cool. I'm not giving every ounce of what I can say about this now. But black people are the standard by which oppression is measured. So when the LGBT community wants to be looked at as an oppressed community, a maligned community, then they use black people as the standard. Therefore, they put themselves in the same class. But when the last time the LGBT community, as a community, lost their ability to speak their language? Don't know their history. When was the last time they were wholesale denied as a community? Forward movement, progress in this society. Have there been some who didn't want gay people to have certain jobs or to oppress gay people or been bigoted towards them? Yes, of course. Well, hell, they didn't want Catholics to hold public office. They didn't want Irish to be around. I mean, everybody's been through that as far as white people. In some of these organizations and communities, you've been through those things. It's not new. It doesn't put, listen, when the Irish was being pushed out and the Italians was being pushed out, and then they kind of start finding their way with the help of the Anglos. They start finding unification among each other because they had a common threat, which was the black man and woman. They were separated. They were fighting against each other. They were killing each other. They were alcoholics. They were raping each other. They was doing all that to each other. But there came a time when they knew they had to unify. So the Italians was allowed to do certain things as it concerns certain industries. The Irish was given the police department. Irish police was associated with being Irish at one point. Still a lot of Irish in the cops who are cops now, particularly in the Northeast. And the Irish were dirty low down when it came to policing black folk. Yes. So they unified around a common threat. There's a lot of history that goes with that. But they unified around a common threat, which was black people, the black man and woman. Jews too. They've always pretty much been unified, even during slavery. The slavery in America, even before and coming here, the ships, there's so much. But the point is, who is the standard? Who is the standard for oppression? Who is the standard? Who do you measure this? Who do you measure oppression by? That's important. Because if you're going to put yourself in the same class as black people to say that you can't make a joke, you can't disagree with their behavior, LGBTQ community. If you're going to say that, what is the basis of it? Because you think that if by doing so, that's going to encode into the culture and the society oppression or bigotry or a destruction of your community? Is that what you're saying? Well, guess what? You have power. John Gruden. What some considered at least racially insensitive emails. Some say racist, some say bigoted. Emails came out. And when John Gruden decided, I'm sorry, not John Gruden decided. When John Gruden's emails came out, he was given all the benefit of the doubt when it was him saying black people, or talking about black people, talking about being racially insensitive to black people. It was, oh man, forgive him, let's move on. And it's always let's move on when it comes to black people. Even some black people have taken that tack. Let's just move on. People don't need consequences. There's this thing in the Bible that says you reap what you sow. Well, that question sometimes comes, when white folk gonna reap what they sow? Since that's the case. But what happens is we never want nobody to reap what they supposed to sow. We move on. And white people just, white America, it's always about move on. Let's not deal with that. Let's unify. Let's be together. Colorblind, all this stuff. So when John Gruden said what he said, about black people, that first batch, that first thing that was released as far as him and his insensitivity, supposedly his supposed insensitivity to black folk, saying certain things about black people, some black individuals that he had some association with or that he observed, then it was, forgive him. I mean, okay, people were a little upset, they were a little taken aback, but forgive him. He coached the next game. But guess what? When the LGBT community got wind of some other emails, these other things that were said that were insensitive to the LBG or LGBT community, guess what happened? He resigned. Because guess what? You can say whatever you want to say about black people, but you can't say anything when it comes to the LGBT community. You can't joke. You can't disagree. You can't criticize. So there was a walkout by the Netflix employees yesterday. And they were like, Netflix is wrong for even allowing this to air, for even putting this out. Because Dave Chappelle is homophobic or transphobic. Because what? What did he say that was transphobic? It had to do with what I was saying, which is to have a joke, to say a joke, to disagree, to critique, to allow that to take hold in the cultural conversation, in the cultural psyche of people, in the cultural psyche, is to then it possibly becoming a part of a perception of that community. And if that perception persists, then the way that community is treated will be relative or connected to that perception. But the thing is that, I'm sorry, you're not black people. You haven't had the history of oppression. In fact, you're not being oppressed. You have power. I talked about that in last episode number 2. Well, episode number 1 also. You have power, LGBT community. You have power. You are not oppressed. And yes, there is some disagreement with who you are and in your behavior. Your behavior is not equal to black people. I'm a black man. When I walk outside, I don't have to announce being black. All somebody got to do is observe me. If I walk outside, a person don't know if I'm straight or gay, unless I make an announcement, either in my mannerisms, my behavior, or what I tell them. That is not the same. I have to express something other than the baseline. The baseline for a male is to be straight. So when someone sees me, they don't automatically think he's gay. Generally, they look at me in men, period, and the baseline naturally is to see him as a what we now call straight person. So when we start looking at people who are gay, there's some expression that they have that tells us that they're that. That's not the same as being black. You're not even close, not even the same universe. So when someone makes a disagreement on your behavior or something that you expressed, you now have to, if you're right in your expression or correct in your expression, not just this thing that I talked about earlier about living in your truth and all this kind of stuff. I'm talking about there is a such thing as truth. There is a such thing as natural and unnatural. But most of us are not, most of us don't know anything about the natural. We only know about the things that we observe, and we don't even know much about that. We observe something, but what being natural is, we don't know much about. We don't know much about nature. There's some natural things, and when you get to a point where you see something that is natural, if you know the natural, then if it has deviated from that, then you can say, okay, well, that isn't natural. But you first got to know something about the natural. So if I see something in a male that is not the baseline of what's natural, which is to be what people will call today in this contextual conversation is straight. When I see that they're not straight and they're going to look crooked, then I say, well, you know what? That ain't natural. Now you might disagree with it, and that's fine. But now let's talk about it. You disagree, I disagree with you. So if you want to have a conversation about it, fine. But don't think we're going to have a conversation based on my coming to your side, because I'm not looking at it about you coming to my side. What I am saying is, let's see what the facts are. Let's see what nature says. I know there's been all these things that have tried to come up with, even science has been twisted to try to come up with why being gay is something natural. Yeah. But I remember science also saying that being black, that we were naturally inferior. Science has also said that. So just because it said that don't mean nothing. Let's examine it closely, and then we can come to, and then see that is what will help change people's perception of you if you are correct in your behavior. Not trying to force my or somebody's perception, so nobody can now make a joke about you. Because what? The joke is there because it's not normal, or what we call normal. It's not the norm. We don't have the baseline. This is why there's a Q at LGBTQ. Queer. Queer means strange. So if it's strange and you have been looked at as strange, then yeah, that can be that sometimes is joked about. Yeah. But if we're wrong for joking about you, why? Because your behavior is strange. LGBTQ. Queer. Queer means strange. So if you're strange, yeah, you got something to say. Now, if I am incorrect, then we should dialogue about that so you can show me how incorrect I am. But don't think you can just tell me I'm incorrect and I'm going to be like, okay. Or you can just force me to see you how you want me to see you. It don't work like that. I know we live in a society where you have the government on your side and you have entertainment you have the movies and television. You got that on your side. And they've made it where, yes, people need to see you a certain way. But everybody ain't going to fall for that. If you want to talk, let's talk. Let's talk. So they were saying that they reached out to see if Dave Chappelle wanted to have a dialogue with the community that was protesting him at Netflix. Well, turns out Dave said he ain't heard from them. They say somebody at the protest was saying that they had reached out to Dave, and Dave was like, I ain't got nothing from these folks, according to TMZ. Come on now. Come on now. Y'all don't really want to talk. You just want people to submit to you in what you want. You want people to submit to whatever perception you want them to have of you without question. It's not going to happen. Not for the majority of people, I don't think. There are a lot of people, yes, there are a lot of people who are doing that. If you're a man and now you say you're a woman and now I should call you a woman according to you, there are people who say, yeah, you should call that person a woman. Okay. You're not a female. I could possibly call you a woman. I won't. But let's say I possibly can. I'm not going to say she as it concerns you. I'm sorry. You're a he. I tell you when I will call you a she. You change those chromosomes that you have in your body that has determined your sex, then I will call you whatever those chromosomes are. That's how it works. I'm not calling you that just because you say you want to be that. You might want me to call you fish. If I don't see you as a fish, I'm not going to call you a fish. I'm not trying to disrespect you. I know it's what you feel, but I'm not trying to disrespect you. I'm only saying I'm not going to call you a fish. You might want me to call you basketball. I mean, I know people take nicknames, but these are not what you're saying. You're saying this is who you are now. This is your identity. That's what you're saying. But I'm not going to call you that. And I know that's going to make you upset. That's not my intention. So Dave Chappelle made some jokes. Dave Chappelle criticized you. Dave Chappelle disagrees with some of your behavior. And he was saying much of what a lot of people think. A lot of people think. I didn't really want to be on this subject as much as I have been. But being gay is the opposite of masculine. Yeah. It is the opposite of masculine. Once a person accepts or behaves or believes that they are gay, they have abdicated masculinity. So that's why I'm talking about it, for one. It's not an assault on LBGTQ people. It's a disagreement. I disagree. So the reason it matters though, is because you have an influence on the culture and the society. So much so that they now want to teach our children homosexuality, lesbianism, trans. They want to teach that to our babies. So if that's the case, you are now saying that this is something you want to become a part of our natural social order. And you started, or you're making another start in education. So when you do that, those of us who know that being homosexual, gay, lesbian, well, I'm just going to talk about being homosexual and trans. You know that is the opposite of masculinity. That is the opposite of masculine. When you know that, then you can't just sit back and allow it to happen, because we need masculine. We need the natural order of masculinity and femininity. We need it. It is vital to our lives, We have to have it. I'm going to leave that there for a moment. But I'd like to thank you for tuning in to episode number 4. We are, we're coming out now, and we're trying to get this thing together. I've made some mistakes, and I'm going to make some more. But I'd like to thank you for sticking with us, and hopefully what I'm sharing and some of the things that will be shared will be something that people can grab onto. And I am about peace. But peace doesn't mean you don't protect it. You have to protect the peace. You have to protect your peace, and we have to protect our peace. And some of us may not even think that it's like, because you do have the attitude that people will say, let people just do them. People are not just doing them when they are now making sure that they want to influence every single individual in our society to their way of being, to their way of thinking. It's not just them doing them. You say they ain't hurt nobody. Yes, they are. Anyway, peace and blessings. I appreciate you coming in, and hopefully you'll join me for episode number 5 coming up.